Welcome back to GMs for Hire. I am Matthew Perry alongside Will Polston, and today we thought we would take on kind of a controversial topic, something a lot of people have their thoughts on. Some agree, some disagree. It is whether or not Omar Vizquel should be a Hall of Famer. And he's entering his fourth year. It'll be next year, his fourth year of eligibility for the Hall of Fame. He finished sixth this year behind guys like Jeter, Walker, Schilling, Bonds, and Clemens. But he's definitely gained some momentum in his first few years. And we just thought it would be a good idea to kind of take a side and, see where we're at with the determination of him being in the Hall of Fame or not. So we'll hear your thoughts first on whether or not you think Omar Vizquel should be a Hall of Famer, and we'll just go from there.
So whenever I was taking a look into Omar Vizquel's career, I thought he was going to be a little bit more decorated. I remember him being a very or I should say a very good hitting shortstop. Amazing in the field, 11 gold gloves. Everybody knows that that's what he was known for. But whenever I took a look into his stats and his accolades throughout his career, he didn't do as much as I thought. It was almost a little underwhelming and disappointing because I got to watch so much of Omar Vizquel whenever he was playing, because he's played throughout the entire 2000s into 2012 as being his final year. Obviously, in those later years, he kind of tailed off a little bit from production standpoint, but that's because he wasn't being used as much. So, I mean, Omar Vizquel, yes, was phenomenal in the beginning of his career. Unfortunately, I got to see the tail end of it. I mean, he played 24 years. I mean, he's been in the league for so long, and that kind of time and service time into the league should definitely be recognized, in my opinion. But I'm not sure if the Hall of Fame is where he belongs. I think he should very much be a Cleveland Indians Hall of Famer. Any team that he's been with, I think he should be in that team's Hall of Fame, because I'm sure he's done an outstanding job with that organization. He's always seemed to be a good teammate and an amazing player wherever he goes. But from a statistic standpoint, and just some people that they've left off of the ballot, or I should say left out of the hall previously, I don't see where they could put him in, at least from my standpoint. Don't get me wrong. The 2021 additions to the MLB Hall of Fame ballot are a little lackluster. They're being headlined by Tim Hudson and Mark Burley. And if you ask me, neither one of them is a Hall of Famer. And he's gaining some serious ground. He got over 50% on 2020's ballot. But personally, if I had a vote, I would not vote Omar Vizquel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a bad point. I'm personally going to straight up say I do think Omar Vizquel should be a Hall of Famer, and I do think he will be. Just looking at the number of votes he got last year, I mean, I think it's pretty inevitable at this point. But yeah, I do think there are points that you made that makes sense in determining why he shouldn't be a Hall of Famer. But I think there are plenty that confirm that he should be a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's among one of the best defensive, not just shortstops, but players of all time. I mean, you think of guys like him, guys like Ozzie Smith, Luis Aparicio, they're also in the Hall of Fame for their defensive prowess. And I think it would be unfair if someone like Omar Vizquel was not to get in because of that, because guys like that have gotten in. I mean, he definitely carried his weight, you can say. I mean, he was consistent, like you said, 24 years, someone wanted him. And even his last year when he hit, 235, which is nothing impressive, at age 45, that's something. And the fact that he was still even playing baseball at age 45 is something. So I know you mentioned how he played 24 years, and I do think longevity should play into it somewhat. But yeah, I think overall he had a good career. Definitely not the best offensive career, but for what he's known for, which is his defense, I see no problem. And he had some good speed on the base pass. I mean, 404 career stolen bases is pretty good, I'd say. I mean, that's numbers you won't see nowadays, because running is almost completely out of the picture at this point. But yeah,
I
I
find
found that
it interesting
impressive.
that this is our second debate on Hall of Fame worthiness of an MLB player. And notice how both of the players have been very decorated defensively, but haven't exactly been all there offensively. And that just kind of shows you the weight that offense holds as opposed to defense in the Hall of Fame. Because, I mean, if he was a 300 hitter with the amount of hits he has and everything such as that, I mean, everybody's going to be like, yeah, put him in the Hall of Fame. Like, what are you waiting for? But that the fact that he was just more of a defensive guy as opposed to, an offensive genius, ending a career with a 272 batting average, it's pretty solid. I mean, it's definitely above average, but is it one of those to where, does it warrant the Hall of Fame? And, with no other accolades to go with it, it kind of brings up that question mark, and I can see why people are a little bit hesitant.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Yeah, Yadier Molina is also someone that obviously that we covered, but, he gets overlooked a lot just because he's more known for defense, when in the end he's had some decent offensive seasons. I mean, he's definitely, like I just said, more known for his defense, but yeah, offense is very important when it comes to that. You mentioned how numbers, at least, didn't really interest you when it came to Omar Vizquel making the Hall of Fame. Which numbers would that be specifically that didn't really pop out to you?
So whenever I was looking at his statistical breakdown, I figured the easiest way I could do it to try to compare him to see if he'd be a Hall of Famer is to try to find somebody who was or was not a borderline Hall of Famer. And the person I found was Keith Hernandez. And obviously I'm a big Cardinal fan. But whenever I look at the stats of Keith Hernandez, I was kind of shocked to see that he didn't make the Hall of Fame. And comparing his stats to Omar's, it kind of made me realize that I didn't want Viscal to be in the Hall of Fame. Mainly, I just wanted Keith Hernandez to be in the Hall of Fame whenever I really think about it, because Omar Vizquel was a great player. I mean, he was. And I think, greatness should be awarded. And to have 28, over 2,800 hits, I think that deserves some credit. But whenever I did a statistical breakdown, I took all of your normal stats. I took, batting average, on base, slugging, OPS, hits, home runs, RBIs, runs, and stolen bases. And whenever I was looking at it, I noticed that Keith Hernandez did better than Omar Vizquel in 6 of the 9 categories that I mentioned. And some of those categories were not too significant. And so I tried to kind of find the difference in what Omar did in 17 years, because that's how long Keith Hernandez played. So as I'm looking at this over here, I tried, like I said, I compared Keith Hernandez and Omar Vizquel, and between the 7 years, Omar Vizquel had 695 more hits than Keith Hernandez. And that's a good number, being that he had 2,877, in total, that's amazing. But over the last 7 years, which was the difference in their playing career, Omar Vizquel got 576 hits. So breaking it down, in 17 years, Omar Vizquel only got 119 more hits than Keith Hernandez. And then the other category that they were pretty close in was runs. And in the last 7 years of his career, Omar got 250 runs. And the difference between them was 321. So only a difference of 71 runs in a 17-year span between the two. The stats were really close with those. I didn't do it for the rest of the stats because all the rest of them were pretty far off, at least for the only other one that Viscal won was stolen bases, and I'm not going to compare because Keith Hernandez stole less than 300 less than Omar Vizquel. So whenever it comes to that, Omar definitely has the upper hand. There's no question about that. But whenever you're looking at it, I mean, Keith Hernandez batted 296 compared to 272 average for Omar Vizquel. As mentioned, the hits in favor, but not really by much whenever you break it down to 17 years. Keith Hernandez more than doubled the home runs by Viscal. He had 1,071 RBIs compared to Viscal's 951. He had, and then whenever it came to the on-base slugging and OPS, there was a pretty substantial difference between the two. Just to give you an idea of what it is, since OPS is on-base and slugging, Viscal's is 688 in his career, while Keith Hernandez's was 821. And so that should let you know that there's bit of a significant difference between the two. So whenever I was looking at it, the more I kept looking into stats, I was not even concerned about Viscal at that point. I was sitting here thinking, why is Keith Hernandez not a Hall of Famer? This is a guy who won the same amount of Gold Gloves, 11, which is outstanding. I want to say first at first base all time, if not first, second. He's definitely in the top whenever it comes to Gold Gloves at first base. He's a 5-time All-Star, which I don't care about All-Star games. I mean, they're especially now their fan vote. I really don't care. But he's a 2-time Silver Slugger. He won a batting title. He's won 2 rings. He's even won an MVP back in 1979. And so the fact that Keith Hernandez wasn't in the Hall kind of shocked me. And because of that, with the comparison of Viscal, I almost couldn't. I was sitting there looking at it. I'm like, if this guy's not in the Hall, how is Omar going to get into the Hall? But it is a different time in baseball. So
Yeah, I did fact check it, and Keith Hernandez does have the most Gold Gloves at first base, 11, most by any MLB player actually.
no, there's outfielders with more, I think.
Oh no, yeah, I'm sorry, most by any MLB player among first basemen. I don't know why they worded it like that.
I was going to say there's definitely people who have more than 11,
but yeah, I mean, should Keith Hernandez be in the Hall of Fame? That we can make that a whole nother episode. But while we're here, I mean, yeah, sure. You made some great points. I do think you sold Keith Hernandez a little bit more than Omar, but nothing wrong with that. Keith Hernandez or guest cameo. I think he should be a Hall of Famer, sure. But I also compared a player with Omar Vizquel, that being Rabbit Moranville. Now, he played between 1912 and 1935, and trust me, I know that was a much different time than when Omar played, in between from 89 to 2012.
Back when pitchers could give up 12 runs and still throw a complete game.
Yeah, I mean,
back in 1912, they would have left Kyle Wright in the game in Game 3 of the NLCS. That's
yeah. It was a much different time, but how similar their statistics are is pretty crazy. Both of them have an OPS plus of 82, which I know Rabbit Moranville had no idea what OPS plus was back then, but it's a big deal now. Both of their averages, 272, 258. They played 23 and 24 seasons. Omar, the latter. Both had within 500 at-bats of each other, so I thought this was perfect to compare. Omar Vizquel had more home runs than him and stolen bases, but, everything else is pretty close. Runs are within a couple hundred, over 1,000 overall. Hits, 2,800 to 2,600. I mean, Hall of Fame voting was very different back then, I'm sure. And they also didn't have Gold Gloves or Silver Sluggers or anything like that to compare it to back then. But Moranville had to do something, to get into the Hall of Fame even back then. And from what I can see, I mean, he received MVP votes in eight of his 23 seasons. So he was definitely winning over somebody well enough to, get some votes. Even in in 1914, he was second in NL MVP voting behind Johnny Evers. So he even came that close. And, yeah, this was definitely a different time. Because now that I'm looking at this, Johnny Evers, you want to hear his MVP season?
No, this ought to be good.
He hit 279 with one home run and 40 RBIs. But he had 80.
This was what year?
Yeah, this is.
What they have, like 20 games?
I want to see who led the league in home runs in 1914 now. But his on-base percentage was 390, which is good, but not even top of the league.
It was Evers with 1. He
Yeah.
was the first guy to ever hit a home run.
No, I see Sherry McGee had 15 home runs. Gavi Karave.
There's no way they were playing 162 back then.
On Philadelphia had
No
19
way.
home runs. They were playing something close because I see a lot of guys 157 games, 158,
Does it say how many career games between Rabbit and Viscal?
Oh, yeah, that was another close thing too. Hold on. Yeah, career games.
I mean, obviously they only played a year difference, so I mean, they could be pretty close if they played 162.
Yeah, they played just less than 162, I believe, because one season Moranville had 156 games played and led the league. So I think that's around what they played. But Viscal in his career played 2,968 games, and Moranville played 2,670. So,
Yeah, it's not
you
too
know,
much.
it all adds up. Viscal never played 162 anyway. The most he played in a season was 158. So actually, that's pretty close. But the thing
Big
is, there were seasons where Moranville played 9 games. He must have been injured in 1927 because he literally
He had
only
to go to the war back then.
yeah. I mean, yeah, he
So
hit
that may have been part of
went
it.
7 for 29 in his age 35 season, but and he took 1934 off. It looks like there's definitely some holes here. And Vizquel doesn't really have that many holes. I mean, towards the end of his career, he didn't play that many games, but I don't think he was starting when he was over 40 years old. Age 40, he played 145 games, and then it's all downhill from there.
Right.
Um, Vizquel also wasn't injured much throughout his career, from my knowledge. I mean,
That's true. He
yeah,
stayed pretty
I
good.
mean, games wise, he only went under 100 games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of his 24 years. And even one of those was strike shortened in 1994. He only played 69 games. Still won a Gold Glove that year. But yeah, I mean, it takes a lot to play 24 years, and staying healthy is definitely part of it. You can't get into the Hall of Fame for staying healthy, but the numbers he put up while in, I mean, they're telling me yes. And they're slowly but surely voting him yes more and more. I think next year will be his year. We'll have to see.
Really?
Keith Hernandez, though, I mean, that's something that we can't go back and change, but we can always discuss. We might,
Guys who got screwed on the ballot.
yeah, we might save that for a whole nother episode. Might put all that together. But
Is anybody else on the ballot kind of like do they have your vote? Because honestly, if I was in the Writers Association and I had a ballot this upcoming season, I might turn it in blank. I mean, I don't know. Nobody on that list. I mean, Schilling's the only person who's like dangerously close. Obviously, Viscal had like 52% last season, and so that's in year 3, that's some pretty solid ground. But I don't know what that compares to his first and second season, and none of the new guys coming in really catch my eye. I mean, if somebody had to get a vote, it'd be Kurt Schilling, and I don't even know if I want to give Kurt Schilling a vote. That could be a video too. I mean, him and Clemens are both going into their ninth time on the ballot. So,
yeah.
are they going to be in the Hall of Fame?
I mean,
it's interesting.
Based on where they're at, I do think Schilling will get in. I mean, he's kind of an asshole, so I don't want him to get in.
Clemens is definitely more the asshole than Schilling, but
no,
yeah.
you got to look up some of the stories with Schilling because he got. Remember when he used to be on ESPN? You want to know why he's not on ESPN anymore?
Why?
I don't know if I can talk about it, but
all right, yeah, we might get demonetized.
Yeah, there you go. Look it up. He said some dumb shit over his time, and I'll leave it at that. He doesn't have many fans these days, but yeah, you can't deny the career numbers. He had a good career. I do think Schilling will get in. Clemens and Bonds will get closer. I think it'll come down to the 10th year.
Good Bonds.
Like I said, I definitely think Omar is going to gain some ground. I might have to retract the statement on it next year being the year he gets in, just because I think he needs to get a little further. Might give it another couple of years.
I mean, he's got 6 more years. I mean,
within the next 6 years he'll get in. I can guarantee that.
I could definitely, like, whenever it comes to the debate, like, I feel like if I had a chance, I feel like he's going to get in eventually. Like, I feel like to be this far 3 years in, I'd have to see what the ballot's going to look like after this year, because after this year, like I said, if I had a vote, I might honestly turn it in blank. I don't know if I could vote for anybody because, and you get up to 10 votes as a writer whenever you vote for the Hall of Fame, and frankly, like I don't know if I'd use any more than one. Honestly, if I voted for somebody, it'd be Barry Bonds, but that's just me. But
I wouldn't mind that.
What's that?
I wouldn't mind that. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
I do think we need to take a look at Barry Bonds, just because it's such a polarizing topic.
It's one of those to where, like, the MLB has to be the only sport that has the guys who are leaders at 2 of their top categories not be in the Hall of Fame. Like, you're
Yeah,
not going to see the NFL have what is Drew Brees lead the NFL in passing touchdowns all time.
yeah,
I
for now.
guarantee whenever he retires, he's going into the Hall. I
Yeah,
Wayne Gretzky, most goals of all time. Is that correct?
yep.
He's in the Hall. They're not going to not leave him in the Hall. He's got the most points too. They're not going to not put him in the Hall. The MLB is the only sport to where like you almost have to question who's in the Hall because some of their best players have been left out. I mean, Pete Rose has the most hits all time in their sport. I mean, arguably Ichiro if you consider Japan, but it's still number 2 if you consider Ichiro's Japan hits, and he's not in the Hall. Barry Bonds has the most home runs in history. He's not in the Hall. It's one of those to where like the MLB has so many like players to where you could debate this just because nobody in the Writers Association knows what the hell they're talking about. It seems like obviously, yeah, there's outside stuff that you could argue, but like even whenever we took a deeper dive into certain players, like the fact that Yachty at almost I want to say 9 Gold Gloves or 10 Gold Gloves, being a very decorated player at catcher, especially when there hasn't been that many decorated catchers recently. Omar Vizquel at 11 Gold Gloves, that's absolutely phenomenal. Top 3 in shortstops all time. And Keith Hernandez, as I mentioned earlier, being the most Gold Gloves in history for a first baseman, and then also going over some of the other accolades he has. The fact that these players are debatable for the Hall is so nuts. I feel like it shouldn't come down to that. Maybe that'll be a rant video I do. Let me get on the MLB Writers Association. Let me get a vote in the ballot. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we could definitely do something on the channel where we all can submit. We'll do that. Yeah, we'll plan it now.
Get your 2021 MLB Hall of Fame ballot.
Next year when when it comes around, the 4 of us will get together. We'll submit our ballots and we'll talk about it on the pod. I think that would be fantastic.
That'd be dope.
But, yeah, regarding Barry Bonds, yeah, I feel bad for Barry Bonds and especially Pete Rose. Pete Rose bet on himself and was,
right. He's not tanking games.
Was right most of the time. Yeah, he wasn't. He
was betting that they're going to win because they were like the best team in baseball at the time. Yeah, that's the big red machine was going to win games.
You don't bet against the big red machine, but yeah, they're no Black Sox. They're not blowing any games, but I do think Pete Rose should be in 100%. I would like Barry Bonds to get in. I don't. Listen, the MLB, it's different because you have the whole steroid thing, and no other leagues really had to deal with any kind of substance scandal like that.
Yeah, wasn't even a scandal; it was a whole era.
Lance Armstrong doping is like a cycling thing, but that's cycling. That's the cycling podcast problem. That's not what we're here for. I think
live coverage of the Tour de France somewhere else.
The French guys can handle that one, but. Personally, looking at this ballot, none of the new guys piqued my interest, really. The guys that were on last year, Billy Wagner is entering his 6th year. I really like Billy Wagner. 422 saves all time, a 2.31 ERA. I mean, those numbers
kind of – that's top 10.
Yeah, those stand out to me for sure. He's gaining –
If you're top 10 in your position all time, how are you not in the Hall?
I think he'll get there. He's got a few more years, so – not worried about that. Jeff Kent is entering his 8th year, and I really wish Jeff Kent would get some love because I know he wasn't the best teammate, but this isn't a Players Association voting, so I'm not worried about that. I do think numbers prove that he deserves more love. He what can I say? He won MVP. I can tell you that. And I know he was a very, very big part of those teams he played for earlier in his career, the Giants, the Mets, and then towards the end of his career, the Dodgers. I wish people – he's the one that flies under the radar kind of. He reminds me of DJ LeMahieu nowadays. Like, DJ LeMahieu's winning batting titles now, and now that he's on the Yankees, I think he's getting more love. But he won a batting title on the Rockies, and he was still kind of – under the radar. I mean, look at the contract the Yankees signed him to.
I used to say DJ LeMahieu was like the most underappreciated player in baseball.
Yeah.
And now he's gotten to the Yankees, and I feel like he's kind of blown up. I think obviously getting more recognition being on a team that wins more, and that's I think we've talked about that on a different episode somewhere. But obviously, if your team's winning more, you're going to get more appreciation. I mean, you can play well on like somebody like Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray played phenomenal in Oakland, and he didn't exactly get the praise. And then he went over to the Yankees, kind of had a rough patch out there, and everybody kind of assumed he was washed up. Everybody just kind of hated on him and everything like that. Fast forward to when he goes to Cincinnati, and he's pitched very decent, and not Oakland numbers, but definitely not New York numbers, and nobody's talking about him anymore. Like, yeah, he's overshadowed by Trevor Bauer, but like, still, Sonny Gray had a decent season. And it's one of those to where, like, if you're on a lower market team, you're obviously not going to get talked about as much. And maybe that is why somebody such as Omar Vizquel may get overlooked. He's been on what was the majority of his career has been on with the Indians, wasn't it?
He spent 11 years with the Indians, but then he split some time with other teams. Technically, most of his career was spent away from the Indians, but that's the longest he spent with one team.
So Seattle, Cleveland, Giants, Rangers, White Sox, and Blue Jays. But yeah, 11 of the 24 years, as you mentioned, with the with Cleveland, the Indians. And I mean, he doesn't really have anything to show for it other than his Gold Gloves and a couple All-Star appearances. As I mentioned, he's not all accoladed out. He doesn't have a ring. He doesn't have. I want to say he doesn't even have any like real significant playoff appearances. I don't think the Indians ever made that serious of a run whenever he was with the team.
Well, they made it to the World Series one of the years, the one they lost to Atlanta. Or they made it 2 years, I'm sorry. 95 and 97 against Atlanta and the Florida Marlins. Lost both series, obviously. And
definitely if the Marlins are in the playoffs.
Yeah, and in the World Series, he hit 174 and 233. So, and career, he's a 650 playoff. 250 playoff hitter. 650 would have been insane.
I thought you were reading like Randy Arozarena stat line or something.
Yeah. In like 20 years, we'll be talking about his 2020 postseason statistics. But Viscal was not the best in the postseason. But he's not known for anything other than his defense. And I think he should be known for his speed a little bit more. I think that goes under the radar as well.
Blind look, just a question for you. Blind look, 11 Gold Gloves and 404 stolen bases. Would you put him in the Hall?
Yeah, that's my whole point. Is that you don't have to ask about average, and I know everyone loves the long ball these days, but the home run's not that important to me. Like, yes, it's important, but I don't think that determines a Hall of Famer strictly based off home run count. It's impressive and it definitely helps, but I don't think it's needed if you're making up for it in defense. I think if my numbers are right, the career leaders in defensive WAR, Viscal ranks 9th all time. And, the guys ahead of him, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 8 in front of Viscal are Hall of Famers, everyone except Mark Bellinger. But yeah, you got guys, Ozzie Smith, Brooks Robinson, Cal Ripken Jr., Joe Tinker, who not many people know, Luis Aparicio, Robert Moranville, as mentioned, and then Pudge Rodriguez. Those are fantastic talents.
For sure.
You list that group off, and you would think they're all Hall of Famers. I mean, I don't know what Mark Bellinger did to hurt the voters, but I'd have to look further into that.
I think I clicked on his name whenever I was looking. I don't think he was much of a hitter.
I mean, not many of these guys besides Brooks Robinson and Cal Ripken Jr. and I guess Pudge Rodriguez were much of hitters. Yeah, I mean, Aparicio is known for his defense. I know Rabbit Moranville is. Ozzie Smith obviously is. Don't know much about Joe Tinker.
How do you spell that guy's last name? I'm typing it in and it's not coming up right.
Which one?
Bellinger?
Belanger.
That could be it. All right, sweet.
Yeah. So Joe Tinker, I'm looking at him now. He played between 1902 and 1916. So I guess that would explain why I haven't heard of him. He did win 2 titles and had MVP votes, but he was born in Orlando. Or no, wait, I'm sorry, he died. He died in Orlando.
You wanna know what Mark Bellinger did to piss off the Hall of Fame voters? He's a career 228 hitter.
Well,
in 18 years, he managed to hit 228 and only accumulate just over 1,300 hits. 1,300 hits in 18 years. I mean,
Yeah, I'm looking at it now too. His career offensive WAR 14.7.
Viscal?
No, Bellinger.
Oh, okay. I was like, Viscal has to be better than that. There's no way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the fact that you're not getting a WAR, like 1 whole point for WAR every single year, like
yeah, Viscal's is 32.9 offensively. That's much better.
that makes more sense.
I'm trying to now. I want to see guys. I want to compare that to guys with like that bad of.
Bellinger had 228 average with only 20 home runs and was bad. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I mean, he had an all-star. He had one all-star appearance back in 1976 whenever he batted 270. And for some reason, he got MVP votes 3 years. One in which he batted 287 one year. He batted 226 and 225 and got Hall of Fame votes. So I don't know what the Hall of Fame voting was like back then, but I'm glad it's changed.
Yeah, I definitely raise some eyebrows every time I see a bunch of those old guys in the Hall of Fame, just because I would like to know how they got there. Some of them it makes sense, obviously. Guys like Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb, I mean those are givens. But guys like who was I? My guy Joe Tinker over here. I guess maybe they tracked defensive WAR and just forgot about it for a time period, because his defensive WAR is fantastic. They didn't have
I feel like gold gloves just aren't looked at the same. Or I feel like gold gloves is one of those awards that should have value and it just doesn't. To be a solid defender goes a long way with your team, because if you think about it, if you compared or if you took out somebody such as an Omar Vizquel to an average fielding shortstop, you're allowing more runs. And, throughout the season, and that could be the difference of games. Just having a good defensive player is obviously going to save you games in the long run. There's going to be plays that Omar Vizquel can make with his range. I mean, I've seen him make diving plays on the wrong side of second base, being a shortstop. He's got an amazing range. He's an amazing fielder. But, if you put somebody out there with, so-so range at shortstop, and instead of Omar, like, remember when Johnny Peralta was a shortstop? That guy couldn't field to save his ass. Like, he as a guy who got to see him play both on the Tigers, facing them in the World Series, and both on the Cardinals, being a Cardinal fan, Johnny Peralta has no range. And if you put Johnny Peralta on the defensive side of the ball where Omar Vizquel was, like, you're not going to the World Series with that Indians team. I'm sorry. Like, maybe, at least that's my opinion. Because, like, gold gloves should be definitely appreciated, because you could throw somebody like Johnny Peralta in at shortstop. Sure, you're going to get better offense in theory, but you're not going to nearly save as much run. So, I don't know. I always thought gold gloves should hold a little bit of weight, and I feel like they're kind of – because a lot of the gold glovers that have a lot of gold gloves and are in the Hall of Fame, they're decent hitters as well, such as like Brooks Robinson, as you mentioned, Pudge Rodriguez, Johnny Bench won a ton of gold gloves and he was a great hitter. It goes on to say that, like, almost like the Hall of Fame is just the best hitter accolade. That's what it is. It really comes down to, and that's why these debate videos make sense. I mean, because somebody who almost gets damn near 3,000 hits should be in the Hall of Fame, at least in my opinion. That's a really impressive feat. If you can get 3,000, it's not a pretty exclusive club, but I mean, it's not easy by any means. And so, I don't know. Personally, again, just looking at it, Omar Vizquel, I guess honestly with this ballot coming up, he may have my vote just because nobody else does. But,
who else are you giving it to? I mean,
right. And like I said, I'm either going to be a rebel and hand in a blank ballot, or I got to vote somebody, And so, I don't know. It's just, I don't know if there's like a minimum that you have to vote in the Hall of Fame.
I think there is. I think that it has to be at least like a few.
Well, if I had to give a few,
like 4 of them.
If I had to give a few, I'm definitely putting Viscal in, just with the collective, because the collective coming in is piss poor. Yeah, it's one of the, I'd say one of the weaker classes we've seen in a minute, but that's just my opinion. I can't wait to see the classes that have some of the upcoming classes that are coming up are really going to be interesting.
Yeah, in a few years, I'm sure it'll get more exciting than this one. But for now, it's kind of quiet when it comes to Hall of Famers. There's a chance, if Schilling doesn't move, that we don't have any Hall of Famers next year. And I don't remember last time that happened.
I don't know. I tried to Google it and couldn't find anything.
Yeah, it's definitely been a minute. But yeah, for now, we'll see what happens. We do definitely think Omar Vizquel will at least move up in percentage, just because, like you said, who else they're going to vote for. But what do you guys think? Let us know down below what you think of Omar Vizquel making the Hall of Fame. Let us know your thoughts on his career, the offensive, defensive, how you value Hall of Famers, what you think of the 1800s guys getting into the Hall of Fame, and yeah, whatever. But for Will Polston, I've been Matthew Perry. We have been the GMs for Hire, and we'll see you next time. See ya.